There are 19 reinforcements in Battlefront 2, and I'm going to be ranking them all from worst to best, based on how strong they are, how versatile they can be, and whether they give you good value for the battle points you're spending. That way, you can know which reinforcements to go for, and which ones to stop wasting your hard-earned points on. Our first reinforcement is a great example of a waste of battle points. Not only is the Ewok Hunter the worst trooper on this list, but it also costs 2,000 battle points, which is just absurdly overpriced. I hate to say it, but in a world with lightsabers and all sorts of powerful blasters, a bow and arrow and a wooden spear isn't going to cut it. Compared to the other reinforcements, particularly its fellow infiltrators, the Ewok has extremely weak abilities. The Firefly grenade can be very annoying as an infantry class, but even then you still have a good chance of taking this guy out. Because of its kit and abilities, the Ewok isn't going to be very versatile. I find the bow doesn't have a ton of range, and unless you're on a map like Endor or Yavin 4 that's outdoors with lots of trees and bushes to hide in, you're going to have a tough time getting kills. That's because the Ewok's only strength is its size. So on other maps like the Death Star or Tatooine, it's super easy for your enemies to see you without the cover that the other maps have. There's no element of surprise or anywhere to hide, which renders the Ewok completely useless against everyone else. The Flame Trooper can often be useless in many situations. Because of his flamethrower, the Flame Trooper is very situational, just like the Ewok. As cool as the flamethrower is, it's obviously meant just to be a close range weapon. Past a very short radius, you don't deal any damage at all. That's why you really only see Flame Troopers excel on maps like the Starship Phase of Supremacy or on Maz's Castle in Galactic Assault. The Flame Trooper can be super overpowered when fighting around corners or in tight corridors, since the Flamethrower only does solid damage when your opponent is directly in the middle of his cone. But even in those close range situations, other reinforcements like the Ovissian Gunner outmatch the Flame Trooper, and something like the Sith Trooper would be a better pick. Unfortunately for the Flame Trooper, nearly all of the Resistance and First Order maps are in outdoor settings. This makes the Flame Trooper completely useless on most of the maps he's actually available on. One of the only ways to deal damage to enemies at range is to use his Flame Grenade, which is decent but leaves a pretty obvious ring of fire on the ground that's easy to avoid. The only other option is to use his secondary shot, which shoots a fireball projectile. But this ability isn't that good either. It has a terrible recharge rate unless you're using the middle overload ability, and since it's a projectile, you have to lead a lot and take drop into consideration, so hitting a moving target from distance is going to be extremely hard. The Flame Trooper is good for area control though, and heroes can't block the flames, which makes for a somewhat underrated ability. With a buff or two, the Flame Trooper could totally be higher up on this list, but with the way EA left him hanging, he's stuck near the bottom. EA left us all hanging when they cut support from Battlefront 2 in 2021, and as great as the recent resurgence has been, we all know it won't last forever. And honestly, the future of Star Wars gaming is as uncertain as ever. Who knows when we'll get another good release? Luckily, there's still plenty of out-of-universe games to play to keep us entertained. Now, I'll be honest, when I first heard about Raid, I thought it was just another one of those games. You've all seen the memes in the past, but I got around to trying it, and there's some stuff here that's worth your time. You've got campaign missions with full voice acting, boss battles that actually make you think, and dungeons where the enemies don't just roll over and die. The cool thing is, you can play on PC or mobile with cross progression for both. It's got some really impressive graphics for a mobile game. That's one of my favorite things about it. So yeah, if you like games where strategy and planning actually matter and not just mashing buttons, you might want to give this a try. Right now, Raid is giving away free characters in the Barbarian faction, one of the strongest in the game. They're one of the most versatile across all of the modes, so they're really good for new players. You can click my link in the description or scan the QR code to get those insane rewards that you can only get through that link, like an ultimate level Galek from the Orcs. If you keep playing at level 15, you'll receive a special gift, an epic level Zargala. And after downloading with my link, use the promo code Desert Queen to unlock Tuhanarak, a legendary barbarian champion, one of the best units you can get. Just be sure to act quickly because this event ends on August 12th. Similar to the Flame Trooper, the ISB Agent is very limited and forced to stick to close range. And it sucks because the ISB Agent is probably the most unique reinforcement in my opinion. She has one of the coolest kits in the game, making her super fun to play. But the ISB Agent, to a fault, is reliant on melee. Her passive ability regenerates health for each enemy eliminated with a punch or a kick. The right-hand sprint ability makes it easy to close the gap and make that happen. The middle ability helps regenerate extra health and support your allies as well. And that's about where the good news ends with the ISB Agent. You see, her blasters, despite being some cool dual-wield pistols, are extremely weak, and even at close range, they're not anything special. And since you're forced to run up and kick any enemies you see, it's really hard to get kills unless you're being stealthy and sneaking up on players one by one. And let's be honest, that can be easier said than done. So on any maps where it's common to have a lot of players together, the ISB agent has to stay away. And on long range maps, she might be even more useless than the flame trooper, since her blasters do absolutely nothing. Tatooine is a map where you can really see the ISB agent shine, since there's plenty of indoor areas and alleyways where you can pick off players that happen to be by themselves. But on most other maps where you can use the Empire, she's a pretty bad pick when you consider that you could be using a Death Trooper or even a Rocket Trooper instead. With all of that in mind, you're probably wondering how I put the ISB agent higher than the Flame Trooper. And well, the fact is, I lied earlier. The ISB agent isn't completely useless on long range. She has a solid secondary fire like the Sith Trooper or the Arc Trooper. It can be extremely effective on maps like Hoth in particular. The problem is, at most ranges, the secondary fire doesn't have enough time to lock onto enemies like aimbot. And on other maps like Yavin 4, there's too much cover to make it overpowered. Your best bet is to play off the heroes on your team, using the likes of Vader as a distraction while you heal them back to full health. But that's super limiting, and it's not how you should feel after spending your battle points in order to feel more powerful than the average infantry. The Wookie Warrior is next at the 17th spot. One common theme you'll notice throughout this video is that the Enforcer class is kind of weak compared to the other reinforcements. They have a lot of health, and that's about it. Each one has cool abilities, but nothing that packs a punch quite like some of the other reinforcements at the top of this list. Don't get me wrong though, the Wookie Warrior has some seriously hard-hitting abilities, but for some reason it's got the lowest health out of any of the Enforcers, making it pretty easy to die to infantry. The Wookiee has the Thermal Imploder, which is arguably the most iconic ability in Battlefront history. It's definitely my favorite, but since it's incredibly loud and takes time to charge up, it's also not hard to dodge at all. If you have ears and a brain, which, unless I'm mistaken, most players do have, you have more than enough time to get out of the way. The Overload ability is really fun to use as well. It hits like a tank, and with the right star cards, it recharges after each kill, so in places like the hallways of the Naboo Palace, you can keep it going for a long time. However, I have the same issue with the Wookiee Warrior as I did with Chewbacca in my last video. That's the fact that the bowcaster could be extremely limited with range and hard to use as a result. Since it fires in a spray, at close and medium range it's great, but at long range it's only going to tickle the enemy. The main thing I noticed when looking at the Wookiee Warrior is the competition it's up against. If you're playing as the Rebel Alliance, you know that the Rebel reinforcements are completely outmatched by the Empire in every way. If you're a Wookiee Warrior going up against a Death Trooper or even an ISB agent, you're going to lose 9 times out of 10. The Wookiee may be a better pick than the Ewok, but usually it's safer to just go with the Rocket Trooper. And then with the Republic, the Wookiee suffers from good competition from his teammates and opponents. The Republic has 4 reinforcement options, and the other 3 besides the Wookiee are all extremely good in their own right. I'll be talking more about them later. And then with the Separatists, any super battle droid that hits headshots can melt a Wookiee in a matter of seconds. The same goes for the Droideka, and even a decent Commando droid player can run circles around a Wookiee and not get hit at all. The Wookiee Warrior isn't the greatest, but it's also just a victim of its circumstances. Kinda like the Droideka. The Droideka is a really interesting reinforcement. I always laugh when I see one of these guys rolling past me at the speed of light to try to keep overtime going in a galactic assault match by going in circles in the objective zone. There's no doubt that the Droideka is one of the best units at extending games and holding objectives. But for me, the biggest problem for the Droideka is that same rolling mechanic. It's great for mobility, but unraveling from ball mode into free fire mode takes time, and in that time, it's super easy to lose most of your health or maybe even die. Unless you're very smart about using your shield and watching your health, most of the time, the first big fight you get into is also your last. Instinctively, you might disagree, but think about it for a second. When have you ever been killed by a Droideka that wasn't holding a corner or had just rolled up behind you? It's probably been a while, because that's the main way to get kills with it. The Droideka is really great on the Venator or the Dreadnought stage of Supremacy, where you can sit beside the blast doors or roll down hallways behind tons of clones. But in most maps, you don't get that luxury. The Republic and Separatist maps tend to be big and open, like Geonosis and Kashyyyk. In those situations, the Droideka is at a loss. Against distracted or completely brain-dead players, you can run over them with no problem. But plenty of players are competent and know how to deal with Droidekas, because it's not hard at all. Coming in at number 14 is the Ovissian Gunner. In my opinion, the Gunner is a lot better than the Droideka, but it still falls victim to some of the same problems. For one, the charge up time on his Sentry Blaster makes him tough to use. It's like the Droideka transitioning out of rolling mode. It's an instance that makes the Gunner super vulnerable, even to infantry and especially to enemy villains. They can hit you and you can't fight back right away. And even once the rotary cannon gets going, it's gonna take a second to lock lock on and melt somebody. But you gotta admit, once you do get that cannon going, the Ovissian Gunner is tough to stop. He's probably the best reinforcement when it comes to decimating villains, tanks, objectives, and even low-flying starfighters. And because he can run and jump like a normal unit, the Ovissian Gunner isn't forced to sit virtually in one place like the Droideka. There's a lot of good things I could say about this guy. So why is he ranked just at 14th? Well, for starters, he's expensive. At 2,000 battle points, it's a lot to invest for a reinforcement that takes a lot of thought and strategy to stay alive with. Because of that cost, he's not a very valuable pick against his counterparts in the Resistance, who I think are better reinforcements that we'll talk about later. And additionally, the First Order reinforcements, who are incredibly strong, easily counter the Ovissian Gunner. A First Order rocket trooper, for example, can completely dog on him without breaking a sweat. Speaking of which, we've made it to the aerials. At the 13th spot is the Imperial rocket trooper. I just want to preface this ranking by saying that all of the jetpack units are very similar. On top of that, most of the reinforcements on this list are very solid, especially in the top 10. Ultimately, some of these picks will come down to my preferences alone. It's as simple as that. Some of you will definitely disagree with my rankings, and I totally understand that. You'll have to tell me your rankings in the comments. Despite the aerials mostly being the same, the Empire's jet trooper is definitely the worst. And yeah, I know the Imperial and Rebel areas are exactly the same statistically, but I'm putting the Rebel rocket trooper at the number 12 spot, since it's far and away the best reinforcement option for the Rebels. If I had to choose between the Wookie Warrior, Ewok Hunter, and Rocket Trooper, I'm almost always going to go with the Rocket Trooper. It's better in more situations, and honestly, just more fun to play. The thing that makes Rocket Troopers great is their skill ceiling. Most players are just okay with these guys. Even as an infantry, if you hit headshots or spam combat rolls, you can take them out. But if you've ever run into a maxed out level 999 Rocket Trooper, you know that they're basically impossible to hit. The movement with these guys is nothing short of insane. By timing jetpack abilities with your dodges, you can always be on the move with the aerials. Especially for people on controllers with exponential movement, it's really tough to track a skilled Rocket Trooper. Even against heroes and villains, you can be extremely annoying. I've killed low-level heroes single-handedly as a Rocket Trooper many times. Sometimes it's just that easy. So now you're probably wondering, what makes the Resistance Rocket Trooper better? It's just her blaster. While statistically it is very similar to the Rebellion and Imperial aerials, I find that the Resistance Trooper is much better at longer ranges. The same goes for the B2 rocket droid. What I love about this guy is the reticle on its blaster. Personally, I find it much easier to hit headshots and melt players with the B2's gun, just like with the standard super battle droid. The effect of having a blaster on your wrist makes it feel as though you're much more steady with your aim while flying through the air, as opposed to carrying a big rifle. It feels smoother, and it's just a cooler experience overall. But of course, the best aerial is definitely the clone rocket trooper. You would think having a pistol would be limiting, but there's a reason why characters with jetpacks like Cad Bane carry them, because the clone has the best weapon out of all the jump troopers by far. Despite being a pistol, it's very solid at longer ranges, and at close range, it absolutely shreds anything standing in your way. And like I said with the B2 rocket droid, having a wrist blaster, or in this case an extension of that, makes shooting while flying so much smoother. Hitting headshots and having higher accuracy while moving is so much easier, and it makes the clone rocket trooper exponentially more overpowered in the right hands. You're not supposed to be able to move this good while having god aim at the same time, but tons of players do it. That's why you'll see sweaty jetpack troopers at the top of your lobby all the time, and it's why I fear them more than anything else when I'm doing a kill streak with a hero. They're basically on the same tier as Rogue One Vader, just mowing down infantry left and right. Okay, that was kind of a glaze, but you get the point. Moving on to number 8, we've got the Cathix Spy. The Cathix Spy is in the running for the most underrated reinforcement in the game. Considering he has a literal orbital strike as an ability, you'd think the Spy would get talked about more. The only other unit in Battlefront to have that ability is the AT-AT, so the Cathix Spy is technically in a whole other league of his own. Granted, it's a smaller version of the AT-AT strike, but still. Sadly, you can't use it on indoor maps, of course, and for some reason, it can easily be blocked by trees or hills on Takodana and Agent Kloss. Luckily, the Cathix Spy isn't a one-trick pony with the orbital strike. Whether you can use it or not, he can still be incredibly dangerous. His pistol is one of the best in the game, no matter the range. The middle rapid fire ability is so good. It hits harder and faster than just about anything. Any flame troopers or villains getting too close have to be ready for the belt. It's at its best when you're hitting headshots, which is pretty easy to do with the reticle. If you're on point with your aim, you can take out infantry in 2 shots. And in those indoor situations without the orbital strike, he has a baton melee ability to get eliminations at point blank range. It isn't as good as the Commando droid's vibro sword, but it does its job well. Next up is a serious sleeper pick. The 7th spot belongs to the B2 Super Battle Droid. I think a lot of people forget about this guy because of the other picks the Separatists have to offer. Many people use the Droideka just because it's more fun, and the Commando droid is one of the best in the game. Not to mention that the Super Battle Droid has an identity crisis because of the B2 rocket droid. The Super Battle Droid may not be able to fly like its twin, but that's not holding him back in the slightest. With the Fortify ability, the B2 can reach 575 health with the right star cards. That's practically like playing a hero at that point, and it's noticeable too. Even the base health is strong at 360. You can afford to run through tons of clones without much effort. That's where Overload comes in. Obviously this isn't a unique ability, tons of characters in the game have it, but I love the B2's version because of the gun reticle and the rate of fire. It feels like once you get your sights centered, your opponent is cooked no matter what. And if you come across a blaster hero with a combo of these abilities, they better look out, because you have to treat the Super Battle Droid as a nuclear level threat. At close ranges like on the Naboo Palace, the B2 could definitely be up in the top 3 for best reinforcements. He's just so good at holding down positions and completely clearing hallways. Even at long ranges, you can still do work, as long as you remember to use cover to your advantage. This guy can be pretty slow, but as long as you remember to utilize your combat slide as much as possible, you're good to go. Arguably, the reinforcement that does the most at long range is the ARC Trooper. Possibly one of the most annoying things in the entire game is when you get an ARC Trooper sitting up on the cliffs of Geonosis Galactic Assault, just abusing the secondary fire and destroying the entire lobby. At least when Leia's doing it, it's a hero unit. They're supposed to be that good. But for a reinforcement to be able to do that at just half the battle point cost is kind of absurd. Other units have secondary fires, but because of the Clone Wars map designs, the ARC Trooper just really gets to show it off. Even if he didn't have that ability in his back pocket, I'd probably still put the ARC Trooper this high up on the list, just because of how versatile he can be. Unlike the ISB Agent, the ARC Trooper does dual pistols right. You get multiple gun modes, with one being a rapid fire for close range and a slow fire mode for those long range situations where the power blast isn't so helpful. And by the way, that rapid fire is really good. When you pair it with the shock trap, villains have to be extremely careful around you. ARC Troopers are without a doubt my least favorite thing to run into when I'm just trying to farm a kill streak. Even when I'm playing the most OP villains like Grievous and Vader, I'm always looking for that shock trap. It's a game changer, and if an ARC Trooper catches you, you're gonna lose a lot of your health at the very least. And of course, I can't go without mentioning the helmet scan ability. Any ability that reveals enemies is awesome in my opinion. It just makes everything so much easier in terms of picking your battles, sneaking up on enemies, and playing the game at your own pace. All of this gives the ARC Trooper one of the best kits in the game by far, which is why he's good in pretty much any situation you can think of. The ARC Trooper is probably the most lore-accurate reinforcement in the game. Well, actually, maybe the second most accurate. I'd be wrong if I didn't say the Clone Commando does a pretty good job of living up to the likes of Delta Squad, and that's a tough ask, but Battlefront 2's version does it well, which is why the Commando deserves the number 5 spot on this list. The Clone Commando is one of the most popular reinforcements in the game, and for good reason. He's easy to pick up and immediately feel like you're much stronger than the rest of the lobby. At 420 health, he's already tanky, and with the Battle Focus ability, he can heal 15 health per hit on an enemy and 55 health per kill. It can really make you feel like you're invincible at times, especially if there's a ton of people to shoot at. And with upgraded star cards, your health regen can be even better, which is just icing on the cake at that point. Oh yeah, and did I mention that that same ability gives a 25% damage reduction to you and your nearby clone brothers? When you get to the ship stages of Supremacy, getting to shoot your grenade launcher down hallways is definitely one of the most satisfying things in the game, especially when you wipe out tons of B1s, and it's not hard to do either. One little detail that I love is the Clone Commando's special melee ability, where a hidden blade comes out to stab enemies. It even does a little extra damage as well. Really, the only thing keeping the Clone Commando from being higher on this list is that, for starters, the top 4 units are just so incredibly good. We'll get to them in a second. But also, the Clone Commando's blaster is very lacking when it comes to range. Even at medium range, I find the DC-17 to be pretty weak overall, and sometimes it can be hard to be accurate with because of the bullet spray. And like I've said before, many of the Clone Wars maps are big, wide open spaces, so that's definitely not in the Commando's favor. Before we move into the final rankings, if you've enjoyed this video so far, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit the like button so more people will see it, and also just because Battlefront 2 deserves more attention on social media in general. You know what I mean? Just like the Clone Commando, the Commando droid's blaster suffers at longer ranges, but its kit is one of the most well-focused at fulfilling the droid's job description, being a Commando. This pick might come as a surprise to some of you, because I've noticed a lot of newer players dogging on the Commando droid recently. I can see why, because the the Commando droid is another one of those reinforcements where the skill ceiling is very high, but for people that don't play him right, you could be all the way down on the floor. That's because the Commando droid has to be played differently than most reinforcements. You have to think as if you're playing a hero, trying to go for a kill streak. You're always looking to find enemies that are isolated or in small groups, and then you have to keep moving constantly while you get the kill. And believe it or not, the Commando droid's kit makes it very easy to play him correctly. You get a high jump that's really useful for outplaying incoming lightsaber heroes, and an extra long dash to make a clone break their neck trying to keep up with you. I love to use the third dodge star card as an added bonus. The key is to use the Commando droid's abilities in a specific order. I like to use the scan ability to find my target. From there, once you get in close, use the sword to knock them down, then shoot them a few times, and then switch back to the sword. Or if they're all alone, you can just swing wildly like it's the sequel's lightsaber duel, and just cut them to pieces. And if the situation ever gets too wild, you just pop the smoke grenade and run away using those same movement abilities. Basically, the Commando droid may not be quite as versatile as some reinforcements, but it's just so insanely good at what it does that it can't be any lower on this list. I love playing as him, and it's not hard to stay alive for most of a match without thinking about it. When it comes to not thinking about your gameplay though, the First Order Jet Trooper clears the Commando droid by a lot. With this guy, you can run circles around new players until they're left dumbfounded like Poe Dameron, saying stupid lines like, "They fly now." They have so much airtime with the jetpack that you can sit directly on top of the enemy and completely annihilate them. I don't know why DICE decided to gift the First Order with such a great jetpack trooper. Sure, it does cost 1,000 more battle points than the other aerials, but with all the abilities they gave him, it kind of feels like a steal anyway. I mean, he literally has a better jetpack than Boba Fett. It makes no sense. Its maneuverability is unmatched, and with that you get an awesome blaster with great range and really good cooldown times. The explosive shot ability on the right side is also really underrated for just strafing over enemies and giving them a mini orbital bombardment too. Most of the time, rocket troopers are nerfed once a match moves indoors, but with the First Order Jet Trooper's ability to hover, you can just sit up in the ceiling and hold the objective, and really mess with the enemy team. Once you run out of jetpack fuel, there's always the jet tackle if you really need it. It kills all infantry except for the heavy, and for tankier units, it knocks them down, so you're probably going to get the kill anyway. I don't think people realize just how useful that can be. It's definitely one of the best reinforcements in the game, and they're a good combination of being easy to use while also having a relatively high skill ceiling. You can't get much better than that. As a matter of fact, only 2 reinforcements are better. One of them is the Imperial Death Trooper. To me, the Death Trooper is an upgraded B2 Super Battle Droid with a better blaster and better movement. It's got the best of each enforcer all wrapped into one. For example, the Death Trooper has the best overload ability by far, and not just because his blaster is better. You see, the Death Trooper is unique in that it can jump around and run like normal while in overload mode. With the Wookiee or the B2, you're forced to plant in one position and spray like a turret. The Death Trooper also has the best reticle in the game, which is just an improved version of the B2's sights, making locking onto a player and hitting 100% headshots the easiest thing ever. And unlike the Wookiee thermal imploder, you get a much more discreet grenade with the sonic boom that still hits just as hard. Because of the way it explodes, it can be really hard to tell whether or not you're clear of the blast radius. So a lot of times the enemy won't get far enough away in time and you'll rack up extra kills. With Fortify as the third ability, you're pretty much never gonna die while it's active. You can never go wrong picking the Death Trooper. And the fact that the Rebels have such bad reinforcements makes the Death Trooper feel even more overpowered. Wookie Warriors and Ewok Hunters are free cash as far as I'm concerned. The only thing the Death Trooper fears is a good hero. Well, that leaves us with just one reinforcement left. And if you've been paying attention, then you know that the best reinforcement in Battlefront 2 is the Sith Trooper. Unless you've been living under a rock, the Sith Trooper has one of the most well-rounded packages of abilities in the entire game. You get a really good grenade, a scanner that's even better than the units like the ARC Trooper, a secondary fire, and you get what's arguably the best Fortify type of ability as well. Based off their appearances in the movies, you probably never would have thought that a unit like this would be so good, but here we are. And don't forget to download Raid Shadow Legends using my link in the description to get 2 free epic characters.